Alright, so we're here to talk today about Spider-Man, and you guys know how this works. We give some pros of the game, things that the game's doing well, and then not exactly cons, but things that can be fixed, and we give ideas on how to fix it. And if you like this and you're watching this on YouTube or you're listening to it on your radio app, if it has a comment section, we'd love to hear about how you would improve the game or parts of the game that you enjoy, because we want to turn this into a conversation between the users and the guys who create the game instead of just reviewing a game. We think this is a more productive way of making game development happen, because just like your friend said, his YouTube channel, who's the black guy that hangs out with Ducky? Sky? Games suck. and he's not like, no, this is not nostalgia glasses. No, games legitimately suck. And in that moment, I knew he was right.
Right.
So let's talk about Spider-Man, which is like a lucky exception.
And we're just going to be more specific about the Spider-Man. It's the Marvelous Spider-Man.
This is the Marvel Spider-Man that just came out 2018. Now we're going to start with the pros, the things that the game's doing well. And I usually stay away from stuff like graphics, because I'm not a reviewer, and I honestly think that review speak is bad and highly irritating.
Right.
So first off, I'm going to go with like swing mechanics.
Oh, yes. Like even when you do it, it feels really good.
Yeah.
It feels satisfying.
And the reason that is because when you're going through the city, the momentum is made palpable through not only the way your character moves and the screen moves, but you can feel the physics in the timing. So there's like a timing system. So when you swoop, it's like you can literally just hear it in your head.
Right.
Yeah, and this is something that I know it sounds like, oh, that's so ridiculous. Web slinging physics? Yes, web slinging physics. And the reason why this is important is because in open world games that are super large, getting around is an issue.
Yes.
So being able to traverse the world in such a unique way, and that is not only just unique, but it's fast and efficient, that feels great. Like, to prove a point, there will be a mission objective on one side of the map and I'll be on the other, and it's worth it to swing all the way over there. Like,
not only that, you can upgrade it and you'll swing faster, and you'll get upgrades to let yourself do things a little bit more easier compared to the beginning of the game and things like that.
Yeah.
So it's definitely, they also improve how you can, not only the way you swing, but the different options you have to swing. Like you can perch, you can still regular swing, you can jump way up and then just let yourself drop to build momentum. And then there's just a bajillion different ways that they implement it in order to make you traverse literally almost all of, what is this, the city?
This is New York.
New York.
Yeah.
Oh my lord.
I'm not gonna lie, I've been watching a lot of Hip Hop Revolution. You watched it with me.
Yeah.
And when I saw Queensborough's bridge, I was like, oh, Queensboro, Biggie came from here. It was stupid, but I enjoyed it. But yeah, I think that's super important, because we also have, like, this is also to teach you literacy in how your video games and movies and televisions work. So when you're playing a game, in an open world game, if it doesn't feel good to go across the map, you're not gonna enjoy the game as much. And we're gonna talk about another game in this series called Red Dead Redemption 2, where that traversal is not that great. And it's not that it was, designed to be terrible, it just came out that way.
You're right.
So in Marvel Spider-Man, another thing that I want to touch on later but want to bring up now is there's submissions by a specific character who I won't ruin, who's like a Marvel staple. He gives out these challenges that basically force you to learn how to swing. Yeah, and to be honest, I'm glad those are in the game, because it's not just like a side quest. It's like, do this challenge because you have nothing else to do. No, like I actually gained something from the side quests, like, which was, you should probably not use swinging continuously because you're not as precise.
Right.
And I figured out, you're right, because you have the L1, L2, where what Spider-Man does is he picks a point on the map that he's close enough to where he webs to it, and it's just like a straight shot. He just treats himself like an arrow, and just fires forward. And if you press X at the right time, you get that satisfying shockwave. It's like, Jesus. And that's also messed up and addicting, because if you don't get the shockwave, you're like, man, I gotta do it again.
He just sits there and you gotta wait till it gets back up.
It's so bad. There is a downside to it, and we want to bring up downsides. The game swinging mechanics are so dynamic that it's not precise when you need it to be.
Right.
So like, let's say you're swinging across the map going like, I don't know, 90 miles an hour, and you see a specific point you want to land, you're never going to stick that landing.
Yeah.
Not only that, if you're on a rooftop and there's a bunch of perching areas, you're more likely than not going to accidentally perch on another area versus going down there and fighting the people you need to. Because I was in a fight and you saw it, there's like tons of gunmen, and I was like, just get out, Spider-Man. He's just like, nah, I'm going to jump on this rail now.
Jumping.
And I'm just like,
that was the same thing Persona 5 had. So when you can go invisible and then you can pop between the corners.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it was so not precise that going forward you just like zoom across and then you might get caught.
It's called snapping. It comes from like Photoshop and stuff, and it's not a bad thing to have, but there should be a disengage button that's really quick. Because I would have loved it if I was perched on a section and I just hit L2, like just a light little tap, and he just falls off. Yeah, that would have made it a lot easier because in a game like Spider-Man, I hate to use this term because the reviewers use it, and I'm trying to stay away from reviewer terms. The game punishes you really hard for getting hit. And some people who want to use basic terms, it'll feel Dark Soulsy.
It really will.
Yeah, like you've got a large health bar, but if a dude hits you in the face, that's a good fourth to third of your health bar gone. And you're looking up like, why am I dying? Aren't you Spider-Man?
And this isn't normal.
Yeah, this isn't normal. I didn't even play on hard. And I was just like, okay, so that's how it's gonna be. And then let's move on to the next point. Something else that's really good that the game did was its combat. I enjoyed its combat.
I think it depends on the person. Because I like mechanics. Yeah. So like I play Wizards of Magic and everything, so I love those little things. So for me personally, I think it's a really good mix because it kind of does punish you for button mashing a little bit. Yeah. But at the same time, it's a little forgiving because his spidey senses. It lets you know. But if you're really mashing and you're not paying attention, you will get punished because, like you said, one hit is damn near a fourth of your health. So it's kind of like you gotta. It doesn't promote kind of the Kingdom Hearts issue where you just tap one button and then
start out with one button and upgrade to two buttons.
It's like it really does promote. You do gotta. There's a little bit of tact that you have to do for the combat more specifically. Yeah,
so to explain what he's saying, this isn't Rocksteady's Batman.
Right.
If you press a button in Rocksteady's Batman Arkham series, he'll interrupt his own animation to do another animation. And for those of you who don't do game speak, what interrupting an animation means that he won't finish it. It'll start another animation.
Right.
So imagine you getting ready to punch someone, but then you figure out that someone's about to, come up from behind you and you just drop to the ground without finishing the punch. That's what an interruption is. It's a complete and utter halt into another action, even when it looks like it doesn't make sense at all. Right. It's like your friend backflipping, but in the middle of the backflip, he starts cooking eggs. That's what an interruption is. And in Spider-Man, you can't do that. There are certain animations that you have to finish. Like a dodge animation, you cannot interrupt. You can't switch out of a dodge animation. So if you're willy-nilly dodging, one of the bigger enemies who requires legit timing to dodge will literally just side hook you and it'll suck and your character will go flying around like a piece of bacon in the wind.
And then when you get hit, because there's so many people, you're going to be getting shot at. You're going to have rocket launchers in your face. There's going to be grenades.
Yeah. I would take a grenade for you. But there is a little bit of an improvement that I was talking to somebody about the game with. And also, once again, if you're watching this on YouTube or in the radio app, if there's comments, we'd love to hear about things that you still think need improvement or things that you like. And just to bring it up top, I was talking to a friend on Facebook and he was like, I like the game, but I didn't like the enemy variety. There was too little enemy variety. And I will say, I kind of agree and disagree at the same time. I agree because there are only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 enemy, maybe 5 to 6 enemy types.
Right.
But that's good and bad. That's good because this game is hard enough.
Yeah.
I don't need to be worrying about 7 varieties of enemies fighting me at the same time because it makes the game,
especially since they hit so hard.
Yeah, it makes the game almost a little bit impossible if you have too many types on the field. But I also disagree. Wait, did I say agree or disagree?
Both.
I know.
You said you did both, but you just did
I agree with that they should have more enemy types, but I also disagree because it makes the game super duper hard at a certain point. Unless the game figures out how to balance, okay, we've got 45 enemy types. We'll only hit you with 6 at a time.
Right. So one of the things that I've learned playing, like I said, very mechanical games with stuff like that, one of the things that popped up in my head was that if you add more enemies, you're going to have to, in some way,
balance them.
Yeah, not balance them. It's either, there's a couple ways. You can balance the enemies, of course, make them hit way less than what they're doing right now. But the other thing would be add more fighting capabilities to the player, as in maybe we can go in a Smash Bros kind of route. And what I mean is in terms of frames, maybe some of the things you do come out faster, just to give you kind of a leg up on the enemy so you won't be overwhelmed so easily. The other thing is make it a little bit more easier to identify the enemies.
Yeah, I feel like they did a great job about that. Like, you knew instantaneously who you were fighting.
Right.
If you're wearing a basic outfit, you're probably a fighter. If you're big, you're gonna hit me. If you're wearing a vest, you've got a gun. Like, it was pretty cut and dry.
Yeah. One of the things I will say that I do appreciate is that because they did this, they did give you the sense to kind of see through the walls, because I know that's not in a lot of Spider-Man games. And I'm kind of glad that they did that. So if you're fighting and you got to run away and you activate that sense, you know, oh, if I turn this corner, there's somebody right there.
Yeah.
That's something that I was like, okay, I appreciate that, because I don't want to get blindsided. I kind of feel like it also, like I said, it depends on the person. Like, some people like that surprise, like, holy crap, I should have been paying attention. I should have been more aware.
Lord. On that note, I will say stealth in this game is legitimately fun.
Yeah.
And that's only to be honest and fair with the mechanics, it's only because the stealth is incredibly fast.
Right.
Like, I can take out a room or area full of people in like 2 minutes.
Right.
You know, and they also make it kind of easy with the safe and danger icon.
Right.
It's like, all right, there's a challenge here, but it's not like Hitman,
Hitman is another world, man.
Which I am grateful for and am okay with. Like, it's like in Hitman, the whole mission is you finding one person to murk, unless you have like those side quest murders in there too. But Spider-Man's just like, hey, and you like rope some dude onto a lamppost. That's hilarious and useful. Right. So I do enjoy its stealth. Like, I'll play a lot of the game in stealth, even though I completely don't have to.
I think one of the things that I've seen in regards to the stealth, it was that some people did want to just leave it as just Spider-Man. Because, you know, you play as Miles and you play as Mary. So some people were just like, we would prefer to keep the stealth with Spider.
Oh, you're talking about the forced stealth segments. Yeah, I did not like those. Yeah. Like, I get why they were in the game, and they were like, some of them were kind of fun, but I feel like they were not necessary. Like, if it was, you know, Miles, and then Miles gets his powers, then it would have been like, okay, from this annoyingly weak child who's a super genius to Spider-Man, once again, who's a tech genius. Or like, if it was Gwen Stacy, who for some of you who don't know becomes Spider-Gwen later on, if it was her like sneaking around and then now she's Spider-Gwen, but like, to me, it's what you're in the gaming industry is going to be known as changing the pace of the game. Right. Where it's like, if you're Spider-Man and you're swooping around beating people up, you really do not want to sit through a mission with a person who has no abilities and cannot defend themselves. Right. You know, what's her name gets like a taser later on. Mary gets a taser, and then it becomes really funny. But like, the first 2 times you meet her, you're just like, oh, here comes another mission. And you're just like, And there were a few wasted opportunities story-wise. We're going to switch over to story right now. Story was great. There were a few missed opportunities in those sneaking scenes. Like, when Gwen does a few missions that I won't spoil, where she's going through a house or a museum, she has a lot of, you know, exposition. And exposition is boring unless it's done right. And it could have been done amazingly, because Spider-Man has a nice rogues gallery of not only villains, but people in his life that are obviously affecting the story. And it was kind of wasted, except for one mission that was extremely vital to the story, which I enjoyed. But other than that, it was almost wasted. But to get back to the story, I liked it, but the second half was definitely the best. And the reason that the second half was the best is because it showed me that Spider-Man was not annoying, even though to me Spider-Man will always be annoying. Where he's talking to Miles and he's talking to Aunt Mary like they're people, and he's just not like cracking jokes like, ha, Spider-Man, woo, because I can't handle pressure. Like, that was annoying.
I mean, he does crack the jokes, but I mean,
during fight scenes, it's like, you can ignore that. No, but and plus, I want to give a shout out to the director of Spider-Man, because he used a lot of cinematic viewing angles. He actually used lighting from cinema in a video game that made everything feel more dramatic than it actually was, which in my opinion wasn't corny in this sense. I enjoyed it when he talked to Miles. How do you feel?
One of the things that I would say is some of the times, and I think you touched on this a little bit earlier, was that during the stealth missions, when you play as other characters, it doesn't really give too much to the story. And as in the first time when we do it with Mary, that's something that we could have been doing something else with Spider-Man, and she could have just relayed that to us. Now, of course, there's the sense of immersion, you know, playing with different characters to give you a different feel for everybody, and et cetera, but it's one of those things where you slowed down the game and nothing really came out of it.
And that's what I was gonna say.
And it really wasn't I don't want to say it was bad, but it was kind of like she could have just called Spider-Man and told him what she found.
Yeah,
and
to sum up what he's saying like what I said earlier, where there's no payoff to them slowing down the game.
Right.
Like Miles didn't get his powers, and Mary Jane Watson isn't Gwen Stacy, and she doesn't become Spider-Man.
Right.
So the payoff in that was like not really that great, with the exception of Mary Jane. Like I said, she gets a taser, and it just becomes funny, and then she cracks open a big piece of the story. So hers kind of had a payoff, but it wasn't like amazing. It was crucial, but not amazing. You know what I mean? And Miles's was like, bruh. Now we have to talk about the cons. The cons in this game are far and few in between, which I really enjoy. One of the cons of the game that I find really like grating in terms of the Spider-Man game is like something that I think gamers or people who created the game have forgot, which is replayability.
Right.
And for those of you who are like, it's replayable, well, if you grew up with a PlayStation 2, a game with replayability came with New Game Plus, which the game does have, but in that replayability, there's usually stuff like branching narratives, things you couldn't do in the first run through the game that only unlocked in the second run of the game.
Right.
A lot of stuff like that has gone by the wayside, and it may seem like a small little thing like, oh, you can't do more, ooh, you're so entitled. Well, calm down. Like, we grew up with games that like had a second game after you beat the first game. So, and I think that tradition should stay alive. And Spider-Man, in my personal opinion, has the potential to be something that would have like a myriad of secrets behind it.
Especially since it's Marvel and everybody is very familiar with Spider-Man. I think it is a missed opportunity. I mean, you can the different routes you can take. It's insane. And if they end up going, it's just going to be DLC, it's going to be one of those things where people are going to be like, I mean,
well, the DLC conversation is a conversation for another day. Because it's like, I personally can tell when a game is finished and when it's not. And Spider-Man was finished. I just wish that they had a real reason for a person to pick up the game again and replay it.
Right.
Other than like, it's fun. Yes, that's the reason.
Right. That's
but I'm talking about stuff like when you play New Game Plus, there's hidden stuff, there's new
more
missions.
Stuff. Right.
Yeah, and I think that they could have done it because like I told you, there's the challenges in the game that the secret character gives you.
Right.
If they would have put more of those in after the fact, I would have loved that. Plus, there's a lot of suits in the game. Make some of them only get it
after New Game Plus only.
Yeah, and people may say that's dumb. Well, it's kind of not, because
really not.
Let's be real. I got 36 suits in a 5-hour game. That's a lot. That's a lot. So that's one thing. What do you think? What do you think can be improved?
I want to say they could have ramped up the activities in terms of crimes and stuff, because it kind of felt like if when you were idle, that's kind of when they popped up, and not really when you were literally doing things. And again, it's not saying that they don't. It was that they could have ramped it up a little bit to really make it feel like you're Spider-Man. If you ramp that up, it brings immersion, because they're saying that if you want to get a suit, you need to do the crimes and get the tokens and blah, blah, blah.
All the different types of tokens in the game.
Right. So I was thinking to myself when I was playing it, I was like, I need a couple more crime tokens, but they don't pop up like that. And I was like, they probably should kind of ramp it up, especially since this is, Marvel. They're supposed to be, at least in the beginning of the game, because it does ramp up later, but in the beginning, they could have ramped it up a little bit and kind of prepared people for that, because it's kind of like it was slow and it was a little bit of crime outside of the main story, of course, but then out of the blue, just bam, just all this crime. And it wasn't like a build-up. It was more just like there was a straight line toward there's no crime and then there is crime.
Yeah, I can understand that because how the story works, but I do agree with it feels really weird how it took forever for you to find a crime and you needed those tokens, and now you're just like crime everywhere, which is great, but there's like a massive skew. I don't give that too much of a harsh thing because of like how the story works. It's like, now Spike's out of jail. Now there's a bunch of dudes running around robbing old ladies with glowing swords. I'm like, all right, I can get with that. But I do agree that the game could have done more in its passive time, because one of the things that they had is there's someone in disguise trying to beat you up. I don't walk the streets. I'm Spider-Man. Out of the entire time I played the game,
I think it happened once or twice.
Because I just so happened to fail a landing, and then they came in packs of 1 or 2, and I was just like, what is this? What? And I honestly, I think they should take advantage of the game's like mechanics, which I wish they would have done in terms of modes.
Right.
So like, you know, have an endless stealth mode or an endless fighting mode or endless swing challenge, or, you know, something that players can really challenge themselves and engage with. Because like, there are challenges, but after a few minutes, they aren't challenges because they're something that you can prep yourself for, fail, and then succeed right afterwards. Like, I don't know what happened to challenge modes in games, but I think that would also like serve this game really well.
I mean, the only challenges really is when you do the
Don't say his name.
I'm not gonna say his name. I'm saying when you do the fights and then you don't get everything, and you can go back.
Oh,
that's kind of
the base one.
Right. I'm saying. I mean, that's kind of like the only. I mean.
Yeah, but let's be real. The endless version of that would be sick. I would. How many could I kill before I'm inevitably beat? Yeah, so in the last remaining minutes, what are just random stuff about the game that you think is a pros or con you think games should use in the future? What do you think?
I think that in a way they're the fighting mechanics, and this always got to me because like I said, it reminded me of a lot of other games that have options. It's that sometimes when you have too many options, they kind of overlap and then they kind of mess you up. Kind of like when you're in a fight and you got a perfect swing to somewhere to get out, but you miss and you end up in front of somebody, or vice versa. And that can turn people off, especially since a lot of the gaming community, when it comes to games that involve fighting mechanics, they're very particular. And then when you incorporate different options, it can overlap, and that can create a little bit of rage. That can create a little bit of rage, and that's what I was talking about with how it relates to Persona and its stealth mechanic. When you're doing something and you're trying to go a certain way, but then you end up missing it because it's overlapping with all the other options that you have. That's something that can get a little frustrating, especially when you're fighting and there's a crap ton of people. You have rocket launchers.
And a crap ton of people in this game is like 5 people. that's how hard this game gets. I will say stuff that there's actually, there's actually a thing that we still have to answer for the show, because I separate, is the game good and is the game fun? So is the game good? Yeah. Everything in the game makes sense.
Without a doubt.
Like, there's not a time in the game where I'm like, what? Why is Spider-Man doing that? Like, even him taking one punch and it's like 50% of his health, like, I get that. Spider-Man's not Jet Li. He rarely gets hit, so his durability is pretty low. I could knock out Spider-Man, let's be real. And is it fun? I'd say yeah. Like, I literally came home one day from a long day of like school and just swang. I didn't do any mission. I was like, let's swing around. Let's swing around New York.
Oh my lord.
I will say another thing too. I wish they would have used the map a little bit more. No, that's typical. But I wish the Sinister Six were harder to put away.
Right.
Because when I fought the Sinister Six, I was like, this is not hard. Like, I failed a few times, but this is some stuff. This is real easy. I mean, they did the Rocksteady Batman thing where you really have to pay attention to take them down, which I do appreciate. Right. Like, you have to, be an adept at the game's mechanics to take down, the Sinister Six. And if you don't know who the Sinister Six is, good. Go figure it out. But I wish they were harder. I wish they felt like, oh my God, these are the Sinister Six. Like, if I get hit by them, it's over. But I didn't really feel that way because I realized, that this is a game mechanic that the game wants me to learn to take out these. Now, they should have been hard. They should have been like, man, this is Electro. He's such a hard person to kill. Instead of, is that a battery? I'm gonna blow that up and Electro's gonna pass out. Like, I was like, come on. Yeah. So, what do you think? Is the game good? Is the game fun for you?
I think it's very good, and it is extremely fun, especially in the beginning. How it goes from cinematic to straight up swinging. That is just.
Those were
Lord.
Those
transitions, man. For
those of you who don't know what we're talking about, it means cutscene to gameplay. And usually when you go cutscene to gameplay,
there's a loading screen.
Not even just that. When people try to make it seamless, there's like a graphical downgrade immediately. Right. Now that doesn't happen in this game. You're like, oh look, he's taking forever to land, but that's cool. And then you realize, I should probably start swinging now. And that's really good. So it's good, and it's we're gonna talk about the DLC in another episode. We really appreciate you listening.
Thanks, guys.
Your Media Consultant. Catch us on YouTube. Catch us on Capsule Radio program. And in the comments, once again, we want to make sure this is a conversation between me, you, and the developers. I will always send these to the developers, so hopefully they start listening to us. Tell us what you thought was great. Tell us what you thought was bad about the game. And if you have something that you don't like about the game, tell us a way to improve it. Even if that doesn't make sense or you think it's bad, we always think about improvements over just saying a game is bad.
Right.
Because that doesn't help anyone.
Right,
We can talk
doesn't.
smack about a game, but if I do that, it's just for comedy. It's not to say that these developers don't know what they're doing.
Right.
The corporate side probably doesn't, but the developers, I'm pretty sure they know what's up.
Corporate and developers are two separate things.
Yeah. So we got a little time, so I'm going to share a little bit of music with you, and we're out. Peace, guys. Thanks.